Perfect. There. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Perfect. Let me see. I'll put the volume a little bit more for me. And then I'll run to get some notes. So we were talking about the pigeonhole. I still owe you the proof of the infinitude of the primes right there from 2 classes ago. But let me go on and continue with section 9.4, which is pigeonhole. So once well, I'm sharing right now. Let's go and get some notes there. So perfect. I'll go here. There. Lecture 1, week 8, math 2305, spring 2025. Let me admit more 2 students there and carry. Perfect. So okay, so let me write the pigeonhole principle right there. It's an existential proof. So it says right there, let me see, I have something on my monitor. Okay, it says let for all, let x and y be finite sets. Sets. Right there. Period. Right there. If the size of x is strictly larger than the size of y, comma, then for all the functions that you could author, that you could write from x to y, then for all the functions, right here, for all functions f from x to y, all of them, so then for all of those functions, we have 2 elements in x. For all those functions, we have, and when I say 2 elements, I mean 2 or more. We have 2 elements in x mapping to one and only one element y in the codomain in y, right there. So mathematically, what we're saying, we have a number of pigeons. That's the domain. The domain will have pigeons. The codomain will have holes. You have the existence of one hole that has two or more pigeons right there, because you have more pigeons than holes. And it's a function. So they all better map. So they're all going to go to some hole, and you're going to have one more right there, or more than that. Is that okay right there? But you're going to have a hole that's so it's not going to be, basically this is what we're saying. We're saying that if you have more pigeons than holes, your function cannot possibly be one-to-one. That's what we're saying. You cannot possibly have a one-to-one function. You have more pigeons than holes. You cannot have a one-to-one function. That is basically what it's saying. So I will prove it, but let's go and do an example. Let's go and do an example right away, and then we'll go and prove it. I'll prove it 2 ways. I'll prove it by my way, and then we'll take a look at Susanna's proof, because it's also very informative, Susanna's proof. So you gain from both proofs. My proof is by contradiction. Susanna is more direct, but at the end of the day, it's also by contradiction, but with a lot more detail, right there, with a lot of cool notation. So let me go right away and do an example. So this is section 9.4. Right there. So here we have there. Let me look at the example that I want to write. Perfect. Okay, I have it. So example. So it's an existential proof right there. So I'll put a fence right here, and then we'll go and prove it. But of course, an example. Pick 5 integers from set A. So suppose let A be the set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's it. You have that set. Now, if, comma, well, period. If 5 distinct elements are selected from the set A, if 5 integers, 5 distinct integers, if 5 distinct, let me say it better. Let me say it from the point of view of statistics. If you sample 5 elements from the set A without replacement, you're not putting them back. So if you sample, so that given an statistics flavor. If you sample 5 elements from A without replacement. Without replacement means you don't put them back. Comma. That's the hypothesis. Then the conclusion says there must exist at least one pair of elements that sum up to 9. So if you sample 5 elements from the set A without replacement, then it's an existential statement. Then there must exist. Then there is. I'll write it like that. There is one pair. Let me admit 2 students. Then there is one pair that sums to 9. And that's the conclusion, an existential conclusion. There. And this is a hard proof right there. I mean, are you going to go through all the cases, all the possible ways you can sample 5 elements from A right there? Because you could potentially do it by exhaustion, but it has to be a more elegant way. And the more elegant way is the pigeonhole. Okay, let me tell you the steps of the proof. So it's a different type of proof. So the method, how are we going to write this proof? So to complete an argument by pigeonhole, so you need to author a function. You need to author a function. So you need to write a function. So author number one, author a function. And that's the creativity of the mathematician, of the computer scientist. Author a function. Well, when you author a function in math, you need to convince the people that they are reading the proof that it is a legit function that is well defined. So then, of course, as soon as you author the function, you need to say, well, it's well defined because of this. There is no way one element in the domain will map to 2 elements in the codomain right there. So number 2, argue that it is a well-defined function. Explain. Argue that it is well-defined. Well, that is agreeing with the definition of a function. It's not a relation. Bueno, I'm sorry, I said bueno in Spanish. Every function is a relation. But what I'm saying is, it's not only a relation. It got to be a function. So all the elements of the domain better map. So let me put here A. All elements of the domain map to some element in the codomain. Some element in the range. Right there. Number 2. If you have the element in the function, if you have the element, if A, B, and right there, CB, AC, are elements of the function. If A, comma B and A, comma C are in the function, are mappings, then B is equal to C. Right there. Can you see? I need to show that if you have A mapping to B, A mapping to C, B better be equal to C. Otherwise, you have a relation that is not a function. Right there. If those two are distinct order pairs. Okay, they are one and only one order pair. A mapping to B and A mapping to C, that will be unfaithful from the part of the domain. That will kill the function. Right there. happiness with that. Perfect. So that's it. Once you have that, you're done. Oh, I'm sorry. The next step. Mention that the size of X is strictly greater than the size of Y. So you author a function and the function is well defined. And last, this is the hypothesis of the pigeonhole. You have more pigeons than holes. Then you can go for the conclusion of the pigeonhole. Then you have two elements mapping to the same Y right there. Okay, with that, you have two elements mapping to the same Y. So if you have all of that, let me go the check, just like a pilot. So you author a function. Right here, you defend the function. An intellectual defense. No, not a violent defense right there. An intellectual defense. Defend the function that you author. There. So author a function, defend the function, agree with the hypothesis of the pigeonhole. Of the pigeonhole principle. You're done. You can say conclusion. And that's the end of the proof. Conclusion. Two distinct elements from the set domain. Two distinct elements from the set domain. Map to. One. And only one. Y in the set Y right there. So let's go and do this problem, this existential. So that's the proof. That's what you have to do in this proof. Author a function and then defend the function. And then, of course, when you author the function, you can put the two bubbles and show the mapping right there. So let me go for this one. Let me bring it back down right here. So I don't have to write it again. I'll copy and paste it down. So I'll grab all of this and I'll bring the example back down. I'll grab it again like that as an example right there. There, copy and bring it down. Put a fence right here. And we're ready to do that proof, that existential proof.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
Why do we do, or why do you say and only one? What options do you exclude when you say from
I
set
want
X?
to right there, because sometimes remember that we have been saying that every time when we say one, we mean one or more. And that
Okay,
makes
gotcha.
me nervous. I know that in the context of this, there is no elbow room. That when I could say one, I don't need to say one and only one. But I'm nailed in it right there, because in some other instances, when I say the existence of some element, the existence of a wolf is one or more wolf. The police officers, they've seen a shooter on the premises. Well, when they've seen a shooter, is one or more shooters right there. So here Here, no, here is understood that those two are mapping to one element, and it's one and only one. But I want to nail it. I don't want it to be any dubious idea that they could be more than one right there. But now, when I'm saying two, I mean two or more. Right there. Okay with that in that statement of the pigeonhole. It could be 17 that they're mapping to one hole, but I need at least two right there. Perfect. So thank you for the question. Thank you for the question. So that's it. Proof. Right there. So that's it. You need to do some problems of this to get an idea of what the function is going to be. So perfect. Here it is. Let by pigeonhole. Principle. Right there. So let the function f be. Well, I'll go like this. Assume you sample 5 elements without replacement from A. Let that be x1, x2, x3, x4, x5. Can you see? Those are going to be my 5 elements from set A right there. So those are 5 distinct elements from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I need to talk in general. It's a proof. So I cannot say, let's assume we sample 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because I could potentially sample 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8 right there. So I have them as variables, but we know they're coming from the set A. Let that be that set, and we will author the function and here it comes. And I'll make a little diagram. Here it is. Here is the set X. The 5 elements, distinct elements that I'm picking from the set A. Right there. And there I have the function that I need to defend, yeah. And that is going to map to super cool functions. The creativity, it's really, really nice. Let me make this one a little bit bigger. Here it comes. There, the first set is 1,8. The next set is 2,7. The next set is 3,6. And the next element is 4,5. Can you see that? Those are the 8 numbers. Look, this is super ingenious proof right there. Super ingenious proof. Look how many pigeons I have. 5 pigeons. Look how many holes I have. 4. So there will be 2 elements in the set X that they will map to some element in the set Y, which sum will be 9. Because every set in the codomain, the sum is 9. 1 plus 8, 9. 2 plus 7, 9. 3 plus 6, 9. And 4, 5, well, 4 plus 5, 9. So you will, when you pick 5 elements from the set A, you will end up with 2 elements that will sum to 9 if this is a function. And I can actually invoke the pigeonhole. Can you see what I'm saying? Let's simulate it. Let's simulate it. Suppose I pick 1, 7, 6, 3, and 2. I'm simulating it. The 1 will map to there. The 7 will map there. The 6 will map there. The 3 will map there. We are done. Do we have the existence of 2 elements that map to that sum up to 9? Right there. So that was a simulation. If you keep simulating it, it will happen always. Always you'll end up with 2 elements that sum up to 9. Now we need to continue with the proof. I need to define the function. Right there. So the function f is, I make the picture and then I will say, let f be f of xi. It's equal to the set, the subset that contains xi. That contains xi. Right there. Now, the first question is, look at the set, and of course, let me say this, x and x is a subset of A, of the set A. So those 5 elements, we took them from the set A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, from there. So now, defend the well-definedness. So in order to defend the well-definedness is this. You have x1 to x5. So they're going to be represented by those subsets. So that they are going to map x1, x2, x3, x4, x5 are represented by those subsets. They're somewhere there because they're a subset of A. So they will map to the subset that contains it. Right there. So that's what I will say. That's the first thing. Everybody in the domain maps. So I'm defending the function. So see that f is well defined, well authored. Because all elements of the domain X map to some subset that contains that element in the codomain. Some subset that contains that element. Xi in the codomain. Right there. No element in the codomain is repeated. Can you see? One element appears only once in each subset. So each element from A appears only once in each subset. So there is no way that an Xi will be confused and it will map to two subsets. This is not going to happen. There and there, because it appears only once in each subset. Can you see how I am defending the function for this to fly? Right there. So it's a little more verbose, the proof, right there, because you author a function. So perfect. Next, so that was the first part, that every element of the domain maps. Next. The domain is faithful. The domain is faithful because each element in the codomain appears once. And Xi must map to that subset and only that subset, or to the subset that it contains it. So must map to that subset, the subset that contains Xi. Period. So that's it. This is a well-defined function. Hence, we author a well-defined function. Period. We're done with that. Now will be last. Take a look at the domain and see that the domain is greater than the codomain. So to conclude, comma, the size of X, it's equal to 5, and the size of Y, it's equal to 4, right there. 4 elements in the codomain, 5 elements in the domain. So by pigeonhole. Now, by pigeonhole, since the set X is strictly greater than Y, then the conclusion of pigeonhole. Since we get 2 elements from X mapping to one element y in y that sums up to nine as desired. Box. Right there. Okay with that? So it's verbose, but it's super powerful because I could have not been able to prove this by cases right there. I would have not gone through all the numerology right there. So this is an existential proof. But let me give you another example right there.
I'm not sure I really understood that example.
Okay. What part, Ansley?
So why were you allowed to say, when you define the function, why were you allowed to choose particular values for y?
No, they're not particular. They're very clever. Sum up the elements in the first subset. What was the answer when you sum up those two elements?
Well, I understand that they all sum up to 9,
Yeah,
but I don't understand why you're allowed to say, why you're allowed to choose particularly sets that sum to 9.
because that's my point. I want to. That's that
So is
isn't
this the whole?
that's the whole point. It's my function. I authored the function. I defended my function, and I want it to be that way because I want two elements from A to map to a subset that sums up to 9. That means that I picked them. I picked somewhere there when I map. So the good thing is to simulate it. Let me simulate it again. I'm putting numbers at random right here. Like if I were to put it in yellow, a 2, well, I don't want to put the 7 right away, right there, but a 5, right there, and an 8, a 1, and a 3. So then that's one scenario that I would have picked those, and they better map to those subsets. But can you see, you're going to have this existential. You're going to have an element right here. Let's just go do the mapping. There is the 2. There is the 5. There is the 8. There is the 1. And we are done. Among the 5 elements that I picked, are there 2 elements that sum up to 9?
Yes.
Yes, and that's why the function was authored that way. Because it has to show that no matter what elements you pick from A, you have the existence of 2 elements that sum up to 9.
Okay.
Can you see? It's better to do it with the simulation because
Yeah.
it's abstract. But also, you have the freedom of authoring your function right there. Okay with that, Ansley?
Yes, I think that makes
Perfect.
sense.
My pleasure. Now, let's do the most famous example that they always do, and then we'll go and prove it. Prove the pigeonhole right there. So the most famous is this one that so example number 2. Pick pick two humans. Pick two humans with hair. Pick two humans with hair from Austin. Oh, let me see. Right there. No, do not pick here. There exists. There exists two humans, and when I say two, I mean two or more, two humans in Austin with the same number of hairs on their head, with the same number of hairs. Right there. So I'm assuming that they are non-bald humans in Austin, right there. And that's it. This is an existential proof. I can go to ChatGPT right away. How many humans in Austin? Around 700,000? Let's say 700,000. Non-bald humans in Austin around, because if you have bald, you just have it. You can find two that have zero hair right there. That's not challenging right there. Can you see? And you are not creating a machine that will count hairs like those machines that count dollars. That it will look like a helmet and it will count all your hairs. We don't have that right there. So it's an existential proof. So let me go to ChatGPT super fast. What is an upper bound on the number of hairs in a human? Right there. So I will ask ChatGPT. The biologists have done it already. Right there. So I'll go to ChatGPT at once right there, and I will ask Chat, what is an upper bound on the number of hairs head a human could have? And they've done that already. No way. No way. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. It is wrong. No. Let me go and give me another chance. Now let me go to, sometimes ChatGPT is wrong. No way. No way. Upper bound on number of hairs for humans. There, can you see that ChatGPT was wrong? No way that the head will explode right there with that density right there. So that will not happen. So can you see, in rare cases, can you see as many as 200,000? Let's say 240,000, and that will be an upper bound. Can you see? I need an upper bound. But in very rare cases, you have 200,000 right there. So upper bound, let's say 240. Let's say 250 right there. Okay, without 250,000 upper bound. But we're quoting this right there. So let's bring that. And can you see it was wrong right there. And of course, they keep talking how the color influenced the number of hairs too. But let me grab this and send it to our notes. So it's okay to see the situations where ChatGPT could make a mistake right there. It could be exasperating if you do not know it made a mistake right there. So perfect. So there, let me go to our notes again. Right there. There, I'll put it right here. So we have an upper bound. It's right there. So upper bound, 250. There. So that's it. My function by pigeonhole. I'm doing the job. Oh, I think my pen is out. Let me get my other computer. Right there. So I'm gonna write by pigeonhole and make the two bubbles. Author the function. Each human in Austin is gonna map to the number of hairs on her head. Right there. Okay with that? So I will say that. Let me right now open go to get my my other laptop. No problem. So that's it. The bubbles like that. The domain, humans in Austin. So by pigeonhole. So we author the function. Here are going to be all the humans in Austin from A1, A2, with the subscript, all the way to A, and let me erase the bubble, but put the A 700,000. That is the 700,000th Austinite. Right there. So the inhabitants of Austin, all of them right there. That's X. The size of X is 700,000. There. Now, the set Y. All the possible numbers of hairs you can have on a human head. From 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 250,000. Right there. And there is the map, F. First of all, these are all humans in Austin that have hair. So they're going to map to one of those numbers. They're going to map to one of those numbers right there. So here, the set of Y, the size of Y is 250,000 right there. So this is a legit function. They have hairs. They're going to map to the number of their hairs. So I'll say it. F of AI for the ith Austinite is equal to the number of hairs AI has. So they all have hairs. They're going to map to the number of hairs that they have. That's the first part of the function. Every element in the domain is going to map. Can a potential Austinite map to two number of hairs? No, it will not be able to. Right there. They have one and only one number of hairs. Right there. So the first thing that I will say is every Austinite maps. Every human AI for all eyes from one all the from for all eyes up to 700 for all eyes maps to y, to the set y. There. No human maps to two numbers, to two different numbers of hairs. Thus is a legit function. It's a well-defined function. Well-authored. Function. Right there. Now let's take a look at the sizes. See that the size of X is 700,000. And the size of Y, the max number of hairs, is 250,000. So X is strictly greater than Y, and we have two or more austenites. Two or more inhabitants of Austin. Mapping to the same number of hairs, equal number of hairs, mapping to an equal number of hairs as desired. Period. Right there. Box. Right there. Happiness with that. So you could be at a party. You could be at a some sort of a festivity, and it has 80 people that were invited. So then you can go to the microphone and say, here in this room at this convention, there are two humans with the same initial on their last name. Okay with that right there? You can say that. If you count 80, let's say, you can claim there are two humans with the same last initial. Can you see that that would be a pigeonhole problem? Because how many possible last initials you have?
$26.
26, but we can have any right there. To be yeah, I don't know, 27. Let's say 27 right there. Okay, so they say Y has 27. And suppose somebody that doesn't have a name. So suppose they decided to make their last initial a number. Right there. Suppose they're related to Elon Musk and their last initial is a number or something like that. So right there, let's just put a symbol right there. Okay, with that, the last one. Let's put for those empty set right there. But again, the story goes that here you have 80 humans. They're all mapping to their last initial. It is a legit function right there. One human is not going to map to two last initial right there. Okay with that? So that's it. We proved it. It is okay with that. There is the existence of two people. Then you can find them. You can start asking at the convention, who starts with A, who starts with B, and so on. And they might think that is funny, and then you're breaking the ice. They're all math people, and they know you're doing pigeonhole right there. Okay with that, right? So perfect. So that's it. Let's go and try to prove it. Let's go and try to prove it. So a proof by contradiction. So let me write the statement again. Or I can bring it down. I can bring it down. I'll write it. I'll write it again right here. I'll write it like this. For all x and y finite sets, for all x and y finite sets, if the cardinality of x is strictly larger than the cardinality of y, comma, then for all functions that you can author from x to y, there are two elements in x mapping to one element in y, mapping to a y in y. I can say mapping to one y in y, mapping to one y in y, right there. Perfect. Okay. It's a proof. It's a proof by contradiction. It's a proof by contradiction. Right there. One thing that I need to mention in the proof, right here. I'll just write it right here, and I will erase it. One thing that is important: if a function is one-to-one, if a function is one-to-one, here you have x, there you have y. Remember, if it's one-to-one, every element of the codomain gets mapped to at most once. If it's one-to-one, every element of the codomain gets mapped to at most once. And if every element of the codomain gets mapped to at most once, the size of x better be less than the size of y, less than or equal to, right there. Let me make an example. Suppose here you have 1, 2, 3, and here you have A, B, C, D, right there. And if f is going to be one-to-one, you're going to have 1 mapping to B, 2 mapping to C, and 3 mapping to D. Every element of the codomain this is for finite sets. Every element of the codomain got mapped to at most once, 1 or 0, right there. So perfect. So I need that right there. That's a note. Nota bene. Let me put a note. And we need that for the proof right there, because it's going to prove by contradiction. So I need to write the negation of this statement right here. I need to write the negation. It's by contradiction. So that's it. Let me start writing the proof by contradiction. Assume not. Assume this is not true. So I'll write right here, proof. There, proof. By contradiction. Assume not. suppose there exist sets X and Y finite sets right there by contradiction. So that I'm changing the for all to there exist right there. Can you see I'm writing the negation of that statement? So I'm changing the for all to there exist. So suppose there exists X and Y finite sets, and the set X is greater than the set Y, comma, X is greater than Y. But then I can say, I need to say, and now I need to write the negation of this, because this was a conditional. And now I need to write the negation of this. Because remember, the negation of P implies Q. It's Q happens. Sorry, P happens and Q fails. Right there. So that's what we're doing. We're assuming the hypothesis and negating the conclusion. So I need to negate that conclusion. If somebody really brags that they know how to negate conditionals, I will give them this one, because this is the most difficult conditional statement to negate that I've seen right there. So here it comes. There exists a function f from x to y. So, and there exists some function f from x to y such that and here comes the language. I need to negate that two elements in X are mapping to Y in Y. So no two elements in X map to one Y. Can you see what I need to say? And then of course I will refine it. No two elements in X map to one Y in Y. Such that no two elements in X map to one Y. In Y. What does it really mean that no two elements in X map to one Y in Y? They all better map. They have to map. So no two elements in X map to one Y in Y. What is the meaning of that? Can we have a picture in our minds? That is exactly 1 to 1. Because if no two elements in X map to one Y in Y, every element in X maps, maps to a different Y in Y, right there. So that means that every element in X in X maps to a different element y in y. That implies that f is 1 to 1. Injective. And the size of x is less than or equal to the size of y. Right there. Can you see the contradiction? If you are 1 to 1, the size of x is less than or equal than the size of y. But look up here. We had to assume that the size of x was larger than the size of y. So we have the contradiction right there. Of course, the first time I saw this proof, I have to reread it and understand it again. Susana has a proof that has more notation. Susana has a proof that has more notation than this one. But I think this one is a very short and sweet contradiction, but it's not trivial. I have to just think about it again. And I'm using the definition of 1 to 1. Let's take a look at Susana's proof for a second. It's really cool, Susana's proof. So I put the box there, contradiction. Hence, pigeonhole holds. That sounds cool. Pigeonhole holds. Meaning it's true. So here, let me tell you what happens with Susana's proof. Susana's proof needs this. Sometimes this is for Susana. For F proof. For Susana F argument. You need this. So sometimes you have a function right here. And you have elements right there. And then you have some elements right here. Right there. And you are going from here and that's the function. That's the function right there. So this is F. And this is X, Y. And look what we want to do. This is new. This is new. We want to talk about F inverse. We want to talk about F inverse right here. But you're going to tell me, well, the inverse doesn't exist. It's not 1 to 1. That's what I learned in pre-calculus. But we want to call it inverse. And look what we want to say. Right there. Can you see what we're saying? It's like you're actually saying, what are the elements that map to A? Give me all the elements that map to A. And I need to give a name to that set. And the popular name is F inverse. I'm sorry about that. Math is a language. And that made me mad. That made me really, really mad because I hold all my inverse functions like e to the x and the natural log of x. They're inverses of each other. So I did those two. I hold them like sacred right there in the math world. And I took the notation as sacred, F inverse. And this made me really mad. But then they told me, my friends told me, get over it. You're mapping sets. You're coming back from sets. Get over it. And if you don't like it, to emphasize that they are sets, use this notation. And that's okay. I can use that notation. Saying that I'm pulling back sets. We're mapping sets. We're pulling back sets, and we don't even need to have a function. We can call the mapping F, but we are moving back and forth sets, no elements. Okay, with that, can you see what I'm saying? Let me look at the other one. F inverse of E is 4 and 6 right there. Okay with that, because E is pulling back. This is the inverse. You're going in the other direction. And you want to call it F inverse. But the inverse is not necessarily a function. It's not a function in this case. It's not a function. In one direction, you have a function. F is a function. The inverse is pullbacks. It's called pullbacks of sets. Pullbacks with sets. Right there. So that took me off right there. But math is a language, and we want to say, what are all the elements that map to A? So all the elements that they map to A is the set 1, 2, 3. What are all the elements that map to E? All the elements that map to E are 4, 6. It's a set. 4, 6. And then you write it like this. Of course, that E, I can also write it like this. Right there. So let me run to Susana's proof. And I might not be able to finish. I have 4 minutes, but I can start looking at it. But that's the new math. That's the new math that proof has. The pullback right there. So let's go for it. Let me see. I'll go right here. I'll go right there. I'll go to our textbook. There. There. And there is Susana. And then there, chapter section 9.4. Section 9.4, pigeonhole principle. Right there. So perfect. There are the birds. And then I'll run to the proof. Oh. Has really cool examples, Susana. There is the proof. Perfect. Right there. Okay. Look at the way that Susana wrote the statement of the pigeonhole. If you have a set F from a finite set X to another finite set Y, and N is greater than M, F cannot be 1-to-1. Can you see that that's the same thing that I said before? You're going to have 2 elements in X mapping to 1 element in Y. So you cannot be 1-to-1. So we wrote it slightly different. Can you see that notation that she's using? So suppose F is a function from a finite set, all of that. Look, the inverse image of Y, that's a pullback. That's a pullback. It's a set. So you're going back. It's not necessarily a function. F inverse doesn't exist. It's the name of a set right there. So then you're gonna take a look at all of those pullbacks. Can you see? She has all the pullbacks right there. She went back. She went back with all of those pullbacks. Oh, let me see. I lost it right there. So perfect. So by definition of a function, each element of x is sent to some set y right there. Hence, each element of x is in one of the inverse image. Very similar to the first example that I gave you. Can you see? The elements in x were in those subsets right there. 1, 8, the ones that sum up to 9 right there. So those are like the subsets that sum up to 9. So what else Susana is saying? Hence, each element of x is in one of those inverse images. So the union of all of those sets is equal to x. She's saying the union of all of these sets is equal to x right there. Because they're pulling back. Let me come to the... Oh, it's already 7:21. So I must give you super ultra freedom. But the punchline is almost there. I will make a picture next time. And then I still owe you the infinitude of the primes. Right there from 2 classes ago. But I will prove that. So this is a super cool proof from Susana. It's nice. But it keeps going a little bit more. Can you see? It keeps going a little bit more. So I need to talk more than 5 minutes. So super freedom, super freedom.
You okay? go over 32 gigabytes. So why do I cap the actual benchmark by having less capacity? That's not going to look on the results, so that's why we're not using these. What RAM did I use then? Well, I used Kingston Fury Beast RGB, 5600 megatransfers per second. I'm using an RTX 4090, 360mm AIO, pretty much anyone that you put in there. I've got different versions of Acertec 360mm AIOs, different brands, but they all cool them fine, so it doesn't really matter which cooler you use as long as they're not thermally throttling. For the operating system, we're using the Samsung 990 Pro, Project Drive 980 Pro. Let me take you a step back to the 7000 series, Ryzen 7000. Here's what happened. There was also 7950X and 7950X 3D. If you remember, the 3D version was actually a little bit of a lower performance for creators. If you look at the specs in here, you can see that the base frequency on the 7950X 3D is a couple hundred megahertz lower. The TDP is actually lower as well, so they can't push as much power through because the 3D cache didn't really like the heat and so on. But now with the 9950X 3D, there is the second generation of 3DV cache. Because of that, they can push more power through and give it more heat. And if you look at the specs, the 9950X 3D has exactly the same specs as the 9950X, except for the cache. The 3DV cache, boom, double the amount in there in terms of, from 64 megabytes to 128 megabytes. That's absolutely amazing. But the rest of the things are exactly the same. And that's the good news. So AMD is going to be its own biggest competitor in this video. But I want to show you the memory controller there as well, because we're testing this also on the Intel platform, the Intel Core Ultra 285K. That one has a little bit of a faster RAM, 6400 megatransfers per second. That's the IMC on the Intel one. And then when you have 4 DIMMs, it goes down to 4400, 9950X or Ryzen 9000, it goes down to 3600. So Intel does have a little bit of a RAM advantage in terms of stock specs, but that doesn't mean that you can't run faster RAM on AMD. Stick till the end of the video. I'll show you that I'm fooling you as we go through this video because there's something here that you see and it's not actually what it seems like. I'll explain that later on in this video. I'll promise you. So firstly, looking at the power consumption, we can see that the 9950X pulls 200 watts, which is exactly the same as the 9950X. Both of these CPUs, when utilizing, I can see them pull exactly the same amount. The 7950X is pulling 150 watts, roughly around there. Actually, when you leave it for a little longer, it was pulling it down to 145 and so on. So we're pushing extra 50 watts through. Extra 50 watts, if you think about it, that's very close to their Ryzen 5 CPU power draw, the 65 watts, if you wanted to do that. That's insane. And the Intel 285K is pulling 250 watts or more. First, let's see the bench R24. And here, the 9950X is going to be the benchmark, as all the benchmarks that you're going to be seeing. The 7950X, so if you're coming from the previous generation, we can see about 11% slower performance on previous generation on single core and about 14.3% slower in the multi-core score. So healthy bump in there. The 9950X is actually 1% faster in the single core score, which basically means exactly the same. And the multi-core score is about 5.3% slower in my testing, which is interesting. The 285K is about 9.6% faster in the single core scores and about 6% faster in the multi-core scores. Moving on to Geekbench 6, the 7950X 3D is about 10.7% slower in the single core scores and about 7% slower in the multi-core scores. 9950X is roughly about 1% faster in the single and multi-core scores, which means, again, exactly the same in the single core scores and about 9% faster in the multi-core scores. These are just synthetic benchmarks. What about when we actually go into the creative benchmarks, creative workflows? First, looking at photo editing. The 9950X is actually about 3.9% faster in the overall scores. Now, I would still consider this within margin of error, and both of these perform exactly the same. In my testing, I'm seeing the 9950X 3D slightly slower. The 285K here, though, so much slower, 18.4% slower than the 9950X. AMD has a big win in here, and the 3DV cache here in Photoshop, pretty good idea. Moving on to Lightroom Classic, the 9950X is now 6% slower. Interestingly, Lightroom Classic now seems like the 3D variant loves the Lightroom Classic and performs a little bit better, and the 285K is 2.4% slower. So photo editing, AMD has clear win.
Auto FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Learning the players' names.
Win a really big design contract. Realize you're more of a creative type than a finance type.
And then you will start having so every 0.5 minutes, read the temperature. That's going to be there. So you're already collecting, then you should be good.
Over.
All right, I think we can make this pretty short and sweet. The Mac team is on one. See, the M4 Mac Mini refresh was already one of the best tech deals of all of 2024. Great computer, great price. So now here comes this new M4 MacBook Air. It's the most capable, powerful version yet, obviously, thanks to the new chip. The starting memory is 16 gigs. It gets a sneaky, slightly larger battery, some Thunderbolt improvements, a new webcam, a new color, and the price goes down. It's kind of funny looking back a bit at the arc of reviewing MacBook Airs over the years. Like at first it was this spectacle of engineering, but also kind of impractical and missing a few ports. It went from that to being, a bit of an outdated design, but improving a lot. Then turned into basically the easiest to recommend laptop in the world at $999. But then with Apple Silicon updates and higher base storage, the price did go up with the M2 generation by $200. So it was $1199, and I feel like everyone just kind of went, all right, it's still fine. Yeah, still a good laptop for that price. But now it's 2025 and it's got the M4 chip and the price has dropped back down to $999 for the base machine again, and that is sick. Now, almost nothing else has physically changed with this laptop. Still the same keyboard, there's no speaker grills, there's still MagSafe charging, 2 USB Type-C ports, the headphone jack, the notch at the top of the 60 Hz LCD, the thin and light aluminum build. This is very much still the MacBook Air. If you want to get sweaty about it, as Dave 2D would say, I noticed the mute button icon is different, and the webcam is now a 12 megapixel center stage webcam, which can follow you around the frame if you leave it on, but I actually do turn it off every time. And also, I noticed on Apple's website, the battery capacity went up slightly from 52.6 watt hours to 53.8 watt hours this generation. So that's about 2% more capacity. I'm paying attention, okay? It's a real life spot the differences challenge. But really the main way, obviously, you'll know if it's the new laptop generation or not is this. Did you notice it's a new color? Barely. It's called Sky Blue this time. If I could rename it, I'd rename it Barely Blue, considering when it's up against white backgrounds, okay, it looks a little bit blue, but when it's up against actually blue things, it literally looks silver again. It's like the LaCroix of MacBook paint colors. It's like someone whispered the word blue in the paint shop just before placing each one in its box and shipping it away. But yeah, now if you see this pale blue color on a MacBook Air, you know it's the new one. This replaces Space Gray. But also, speaking of boxes, this is the box that my MacBook Air came in from Apple, the review unit. And I don't know if you notice on the corner there, it appears someone has bled onto the box of this computer. I don't really know how that happens. I pulled it out of the cardboard shipping box and it just looked like this. Really weird. Never seen that before. I really hope whoever packaged this computer is okay. Anyway, the main reason this laptop is such a big deal is the chip.
Dangerous pass, Prince. Turned away, Gary Trent. He's got it. Big three by Trent Jr. And we're all tied. Man, who's going to blink first here, partner? Remember the Pacers had that 10-0 run? Bucks come right back. Look at that. 20 ties, 19 lead changes. Then a wild one tonight. Halliburton got a step on Lopez, able to score, held him off. Thought he was fouled. Halliburton puts the Pacers back in front.
I think Doc's going to finish with any combination of high screen and roll with Giannis being the playmaker.
Torian Prince resets. Prince drives it. Floater. No. Halliburton the rebound. Siakam. You got Jennison Hubbard. You got Gary Trent guarding them. Bullet pass. Quick release. Bryant misses it. 4.5 to go in regulation. Third meeting of the year. Bucks and Pacers. Doc Rivers wants to talk it over. Timeout on the floor. It'll be Bucks ball when we come back. We got a ball game tonight on TNT.
The playoffs are on the horizon. 1, 2, 3. Time to make a push.
Here we go.
First,
What's like the one thing that like you learned the most from your dad that you use in your life now?
If a deal isn't good for both sides, then it's not a good deal. A one-sided deal is eventually going to either fall apart or come back and haunt you. It's just not the way to do business.
Yeah.
And my dad was a very fair man and didn't take advantage of people. And I carry in that tradition.
I love that. That was a fair trade with the Luka thing, I guess. I mean, I had to go there, Jeannie. Welcome to Games with Names. I'm Julian Edelman. They're Jack and Kyler, and we're on a mission to find the greatest game of all time. On today's episode, we are covering Game 6 of the 2020 NBA Finals, Miami Heat versus the LA Lakers, with co-founder of WOW, Women of Wrestling, LA icon, and Lakers governor, Jeannie Buss. We get into talking LeBron James Bubble Championship.
LeBron comes over and hugs me and whispers in my ear, I told you we would do this.
What Kobe Bryant means to the Lakers.
I know that Kobe knew how much we loved him. You can't replace that.
And behind the scene of the Luka trade.
It could blow up our season. So it was completely kept under wraps.
Yeah. And then we're checking in with Jackie in this week's Chill Zone, presented by Coors Light. You got to stick around to the very end. Games with Names is a production of iHeartRadio. October 11th, 2020, ESPN Worldwide Sports Complex, Lake Buena Vista, Florida.
Uncertain times make for an unprecedented path to winning it all.